Today we are going to talk about a very, very offensive, dirty, slang word,
Green beans.
very green bean word when it comes to poetry. That word is business emphasized. It's,
I just want to be a writer.
it's disgusting.
Oh, is it working now?
It should be.
oh, oh,
We're going to be talking about business, but
yeah.
we're going to be trying to ask ourselves, are there ways to approach poetry from a business perspective in a way that doesn't feel so icky and harmful and slimy and disgusting to folks? Good morning, good evening, afternoon, guys. Welcome to Diverse Live. This is your weekly poetry show. To guide you in this process, there's me. Hello, my name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
And today, like I said, we're kind of, this camera was a little high, right? We're going to be talking about, I'm going to lower this camera a little bit. We're going to be talking again about poetry. We would love to know your own thoughts. You can let us know in the comment or in the chat if you're hanging with us. What are your thoughts on poetry in business? What are your thoughts on business? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you like, capitalism is horrible and destroying things? Or are you like, no, I think there's ways that we can be responsible with it? Matthias, what's kind of your own take on this stance?
I'm not one of the people that I don't think that capitalism is like wholly or entirely, kind of terrible. I think that especially when we're talking about commerce and like capitalism as it goes to creating or building your artistic brand and kind of culture and business around it. I think really the biggest thing that I think like the biggest advantage is that like the distribution and kind of viewscape of your work is like it's really dependent on either somebody else making it happen for you, so like you have another entity somewhere that just, oh, I just believe in your work so much, like I just want to make sure, or I have multiple entities doing that. And to be clear, like that's not an issue, that's not like bad necessarily, right? Or it's you, right? Or you're like, well, I'm going to make sure that my work gets out there. I'm going to make sure I get these opportunities or I create opportunities for myself. And that is going to be the business, right? That's going to be you kind of creating opportunities. If your work has no way of, well, actually, I'll say this, like I direct it as a positive. If an event space or a platform sees the value in your work because you are building up your work and you're creating a platform for your work, it's going to make a lot of other doors a lot easier to open. And I don't really see anything necessarily negative about that as a fact. I mean, you might do negative things in order to get that, but yeah, ultimately, it's definitely something that I'm striving to do. It's definitely something that I would encourage people to really look at their work as, this was the entirety of the platform, right? Kind of look at their work as, an asset, as opposed to, this is just this thing that I do sometimes, and hopefully, somebody loves my work so much that they'll just give me $1 million because my poem was so great, like, or you can leverage the asset that you have, which is your work, into opportunities.
Part of the reason I asked is so tonight was it was a special night for Diverses. We have launched a new program. So we launched something that is called, you can have a flyer. We have a little flyer. We launched a program called Poet Business Institute. So tonight it was me and a couple poets unfortunately got sick, but in total we're going to be a group of about me and about 5 other poets where we meet once a week and basically are trying to work towards specific kind of professional related poetry goals. And one of the things that's unique about this is that this is a subscription based program. So these are poets that have heard my goal for the program, trying to achieve financial and creative kind of sustenance for ourselves. And they're like, yo, I'm in. And it wasn't something that was like, do this, have to do this. It was just, I put the call out on social media. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. It's going to be limited. Are there people who'd be interested in joining? And there's the people that reached out and said, yo, this I understand the price point. So right now we're thinking about probably about $40 a month for 4 workshops and things like that, and we're going with it. And I think that this sort of approach where you're giving something, and you're not forcing it on people because no one has to say yes. It's an offer,
Yeah.
you know. And if people find value in what you're doing and you're working for them, I don't personally have a problem with that.
Yeah.
It's everyone's helping each other. You know what I mean? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's on the one hand you're providing the platform, and you're also learning, leadership skills, presentation skills. You're going deeper in the craft as well, and then you're helping other people to do the same and also leave with their own things that they're going to be able to move forward with. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's like the kind of the point that you're making when it comes to somebody sees value in it. It's like not only do you see value in it, like you're agreeing to what that value would be, right? So like if you purchased a car and you're like, man, like I see value in a car, somebody else says, well, there's this monetary attachment to the value that I see in the car. This is the value that I see in the car. And when y'all come to an agreement, that's when you've purchased the car, because it's saying that like, okay, what I get in return is the same, or somewhere around, or
It's higher
like,
usually. A lot of times it's higher.
well, for them, right? So like for the person that's selling the car, it's like it like let's say you bought a car for $10,000. You would only buy a car for $10,000 if you felt like you were gonna get more than $10,000
Right.
worth of value out of the vehicle.
Right.
If you thought that you would miss $10,000, if you thought you would miss far more than $10,000 by not having the vehicle. And so for the person that's selling the car, they might have a hard metric for, okay, this is how much this car I need to sell this car for, but that's not a reflection on what you're going to be getting out of the vehicle.
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing here. I think that when we're talking about I mean, really, when we're talking about like any kind of like artistic service or any kind of service that is like helping build you in your creative professionalism, it's like, yeah, there's time, there's assets, there's attention, there's all the information and know-how that that you yourself are going to be bringing to the table, that you're going to be able to assist people with in the experience. And it's like, if they were thinking, oh, I'm gonna get exactly the how whatever the cost of the subscription is, if they were getting exactly out of it, like they probably wouldn't buy it,
Yeah.
right? But if they thought, oh, I can use these tools to branch off, not only do what I intend to do with my art, but really kind of grow, which is really any kind of development, right? Like any kind of development, you're not looking for everybody, you know you're not looking for everybody that's part of that development cycle to just take it exactly past, get their money's worth, and then cut it off. You're gonna get your money's worth, and then a lot more, because you're gonna have all the tools to now take it as far as you want.
And I think sometimes we get stuck on this concept of like, determinate value. Like we said, like people are only going to buy something if they think that what they're getting is more valuable than what they're paying.
Yeah.
But we also have to understand that, just because we create the thing doesn't mean that we necessarily determine the value of the thing. Because like, if I build a house and then I try to sell that house for for like $1 million and no one buys it, then the house isn't worth $1 million. Like other people have to be like, yes, I am willing to give this amount of money for the thing. And so, the person that's buying whatever you're offering is more value. Like for instance, there's some people that like, you could offer them like a Ferrari, and they'd be like, no, I don't want it. It's like I don't want the insurance. I don't want I don't want all the things that I don't want to pay $1,000 for new headlights. I don't want to do like all the like all those things that come with owning a luxury car. They're like, you know what, the car's worth a lot, but for me, it's I wouldn't pay for that. you know,
Yeah.
or like high price paintings, you know, like Mona Lisa's cool, but I wouldn't like. Would you give up all your life's savings to buy like $1 million painting? Maybe not. You know,
Oh,
like I don't.
yeah, and I think that's a good. I think that's like that goes to. I guess I also like position, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
if with me myself, would I do that? No, but I might if I will. Would I do that? No, but if I knew right now, there's some guy in Dayton, Ohio, right now that's like, I'm sitting on $10 million, and if I got that Mona Lisa, like I would get it. You
And
know
then
what
you
I'm
get
saying?
it for them.
Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, I would give up all my
Mm-hmm.
life savings because like that guy is willing to pay
Mm-hmm.
$10 million, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm only going to give up $1 million,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's not to say that I have $1 million saved up right now. So don't come looking for me. Or do. I don't know. Whatever you want
So
to do.
I think, and it's something I see with poets kind of focusing on their work. I think you see a lot of poets struggling to understand what's the value of the work that I do. What's the value of this poem I wrote? What's this value of the book? I made a book, like you see, like self-published books. Like I made a book. What should I charge for my book?
Yeah.
You know, or I got a feature. How much should I charge for the feature? You know, or should I just take exposure? You know, I know, for instance, that exposure argument often gets knocked. I think there are times when that exposure might be something worth considering, though there are also times when that should not be the thing you consider. You know, so just trying to understand what it is to value, and part of that, one way you can check is kind of like exactly what we did with this program with the Poet Business Institute. Is again just put a call out and see what the response is. And if you're hearing crickets, then obviously there's no something's not resonating.
Yeah.
You're pricing offer wrong, or maybe the timing's not right. Whatever the case may be, but that's just a real quick gauge. And the other issue is, you know, the offer may be right, but it might just be you're not reaching enough people. So that's the other side. Is like, you know, okay, I have this book. I'm charging like $20 for it. I put the call out on my social media, and I got one response. Well, the other issue it may be that your thing's perfectly priced, but you're just not getting enough people. So it's like, okay, well, I got one person that said they're interested, and I know I reached probably 1,000 people. Well, now you know your rate. You know that, okay, if I want to make $100 in sales, and the book is $20, let's imagine just $20 profit. Let's just imagine there's no like publication costs and stuff like that. I get $20 profit from this book. Well, then for every 1,000 people, well, cool. Now you need to reach, you know, 5,000 people. You know, like it's just a numbers game. You know, anything can scale. So then it just is like, and I think that's also a very helpful way to kind of approach it, because it makes it feel a lot less. In my opinion, it makes it feel a lot less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because it actually kind of puts like, okay, 5,000 people. Well, 5,000 people. That means if I spread that out over a month, you know, that's, you know, however many people a day, you know, or if I spread over 2 months, or if I spread over a year, you know, 5,000 people spread out over an entire year. It's like, that's not horrible to do. You know what I mean?
It's
Like
not horrible, but it's like, I think the worst thing is the unknown, right? So
No.
if you're just kind of flailing about, you're not really kind of creating any kind of structure or marking the spaces where, you know, you've been getting a lot of callbacks, and you begin, because a lot of times, like, that's like another missed opportunity. You know, you'll go through these seasons where maybe you're just posting on Facebook, posting on Twitter, posting on, or X, posting on Instagram, posting on Threads, and like maybe you're trying a couple things, but you're just kind of throwing as much stuff as you can out there. And then let's say you're doing all that stuff, and then during 1 week in May you got a huge response, right? And then but you just kind of kept going, but you're not really checking, man, where did I get the response from? Where did that come from? So it's like those are things that you always, I think it's, especially as a business owner, what you should kind of look at, because it's like, I would say, like, it's a business in the way that, like, your work is an asset, right? And so you're managing an asset.
Right.
And so, yeah, you should be looking at it like, okay, how do I manage this asset? And I think one thing to kind of tag along with, I think when it comes to like the market determining the value, like you yourself and the market having to agree upon a value in order for you to really be able to kind of go through. Permission to use an analogy.
Tentatively granted.
Fair enough. So, there is this like relationship, like podcast, like kind of program, and like somebody was like, you know, they were like, I'm an attractive guy, you know, I got a personality, I'm super polite to everybody, I'm charismatic, all this other stuff. And like, you know, for some reason, you know, want to go out with me, and I think it's because, you know, women are either these ladies are full of themselves, or maybe this is, and I'm just like, you know, you've respectfully, you've conducted the market research, right? So you've put yourself out there. He talked about he put himself out there on dating apps. He put himself out there on social media. He approached people and all this other stuff, and people and women just were not responding. And so I'm like, so like, you can't tell the market what to feel. You can't say, hey, you have to love. You're supposed to be loving my product. What's wrong with you, right? You have to put the best product out there, and that's what I. Again, when it comes to, I guess, like the best version of capitalism requires somebody liking and enjoying your product in order for there to be an exchange, right? So I'm like, you've conducted the market research, and the market's not responding to what you're putting out. So either you can come to whatever conclusion you can come to, you still have to change, right? So if you come to the conclusion that every woman on this planet is just wrong and they're messed up, I'm like, so either you want a partner, or maybe, or you know what I'm saying, or you don't. And I think that's like, it's the same thing when it comes to like your work, when it comes to like either pricing your work or getting your work out there. I think a lot of times people view their work in an esteem that is not realistic. And it's not, at least not right now, right? So a lot of times, like, there's people that have never performed before, and you get this a lot, especially with open mics, because I think the more or less instant gratification of, you know, people hearing your words and responding, either snapping or clapping. Sometimes you get the rewind, so now you have people get that instant gratification from the audience, and then now their work, which used to just be something they do for fun, is now it's this conglomerate, and I need to charge this much. And if you haven't done the work associated with really building up yourself and building up your platform and building up your work on the other side of that, then, you know, it's kind of laying on really weak a really weak foundation, which is again something that if you have a platform and if you have work associated with really building up your work outside of that, then it'll really help out.
I think that kind of ties into some other issues I see with poets and business stuff too. I think one of the reasons poets don't like the idea of business is I think we have this like, concept of like the like kind of like the pushy like car salesman or something like that. Like I think we have that in our minds, and we're like, I don't want to be that guy. You know, I don't want to pressure people to make a sale. I don't want to like make people think that my only interest in selling the book is money. I think the relationship that a lot of not just poets but kind of just people in creative industries in general are just the relationship with money is not healthy. You know, we're taught money is this thing that sacrifices the art in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. I think it's that, and I also think it's because, like, I think you, in some ways, I don't want to say, like, you have it worse than that guy that's selling a car in the car lot, but you actually really do, right? Like, because if you think about it, the guy that's selling a car in the car lot, he's if you're seeing him and you're meeting him, it means that you're already in a position to need him. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times when you're selling your craft or you're trying to like
Mm-hmm.
put your craft out there,
Mm-hmm.
you might be approaching people who don't really even know they need you in specific,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so like that I think that relationship, it's worse for poets that don't think that they need that relationship, or they don't like that, because it's like, you actually, if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to make a business out of it, you're actually in a, and I'm not saying that you have to be the skeezy car salesman. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
not bad car salesmen out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, like, you don't have to necessarily be like that, but it's just like, man, like, you have to really be able to recognize and create opportunities for yourself in a way that is much more, I would say, consistent and not pressuring but persistent
Mm-hmm.
than, that car salesman. Because, like, yeah, you have an asset, or you have a product that, if somebody doesn't have it by next week, they're not thinking, well, I can't get to work. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that guy's at least trying to selling you on travel.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to sell them on the fact that, whatever somebody can do with your work, and there's a lot of stuff that people can do with your work if need be.
I was listening to a talk. There's a guy who wrote a book. I haven't read the book, called Lean Marketing. His name is Alan Dibb. And one of the things that I think that he was talking about that I thought really resonated was he was kind of talking about, just two big marketing approaches that you see in this. And one of them, I think, based on what he was saying, works a lot better with introverts. And I think a lot of people doing like poetry tend to, I think there's a tendency towards introversion
Yeah.
for a lot. And so one of the marketing strategies is this big focus on kind of what we're talking about, like direct sales, like organizing lots of opportunities to basically end a conversation with like a pitch and things. And one of the advantages from a marketing standpoint is there's a lot of emphasis on data. It's a lot of like you're checking your funnels, you're checking your conversion rates, you're checking everything. It's a lot of data driven stuff, so you can you're constantly tweaking to work towards efficiency, right?
Yeah.
Which I think that sort of strategy for a lot of poets does not sound very appealing, myself included. It's a lot of work. But there's another strategy, which is the one that I would say in general we're using more with the verses as well, where it's in a lot of ways a much, much slower strategy, because it ends up being a lot more qualitative than quantitative. So it's hard to, there's a fly buzzing around. Sorry about that. So the things become a lot harder to track, but it's kind of like the sense of like increasing exposure, and largely doing that by trying to focus on like help and impact. So it's like, for instance, creating a YouTube channel. Imagine that, creating a YouTube channel that acts as a way to provide resources to poets or to writers or something like that. Just like imagine this for me just for a moment. You know what I mean? You sprinkle in opportunities and things like that. Like we've hosted retreats. We again organized the Poet Business Institute and things like that. But it's not all about those things. It's also about bringing on interviews. Like, for instance, we've brought on poets who, for instance, have experience teaching at MFA programs, so sharing what they've done. Or we bring in like poet laureates talking about what their roles are. Or we bring in people giving craft talks and show what they are. Or we organize like a free open mic and things. So it's like finding ways to be out there to support,
Yeah.
and to help. And then at the same time, by increasing that exposure, those times where you do have things that you're offering that, again, are in a similar vein, they're created to serve and to help, but instead of being free or things that cost money, well, because you've reached people and they trust you more, and they like the content, and you're helping them, they may be like, oh wow, this stuff over here helped me. I think this thing that they're doing, That's maybe it's going to be a little bit more refined or the packaging's a little bit different. That's something I want to go towards. Or not, because the reality is like most people. No, but in all honesty,
or not,
or not.
I can love to do all this stuff.
Or just now.
It could be a lumberjack tomorrow.
But the thing is that like you're still getting something from the person in a way. You're getting something that's more valuable than money, which is you're getting people's attention. You can make more money. Money is an infinite resource. It's very abundant. You can get more of it. Time is not. You cannot get back more time. So like if you're like watching something, you're not going to get that moment back. And also you can't, by and large, you can't really watch multiple things at once. If I'm watching a YouTube video, it's hard for me to watch 2 YouTube videos at once at the same time, I watch one, I make a choice. We're constantly making choices. You can't do that. So, that's, from the standpoint of a business, like you have to, respect the person. Like attention is like super, super valuable. And it's not something to take for granted, so, and then at the same time, also when you're creating a platform, that act of creating a platform is also, you're learning a whole new skill set as well. You're learning communication, and all this, all the while you're also, it gives you time to learn more about the thing you're talking about.
I think there's something that's really interesting because it's like, I think a lot of people know how to communicate, but a lot of people don't know how to communicate themselves. Oh, sorry. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I really learned, especially when like creating bios, whenever a lot of times, like if I have like a feature or if I have something that's going to be up in a gallery or something like that, I have to write a bio. And so in writing the bio, I have to really sit there and, I have like some kind of platform, like just like this is just something I typically send out, but I always edit them somewhat in the situation. But whenever I'm writing a new one to kind of refresh it, I have to really think about what I'm communicating about myself as an artist in this venue, right? And that is not it's just, I think before you are an artist, before you are somebody who is consistently doing that, it's not something that you really necessarily think about. Right? It's not that like most people won't need to make a bio about themselves. You know what I mean? And I think that translates, reverse translates back to like most people aren't necessarily going to have to create a business around work that they're communicating. So yeah, that ability to do that, or the space to be able to do that is really, really valuable, especially if you're leaning further into that field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100. There's so many more considerations, like just in terms of how you present yourself. In a lot of ways, I know that business terminology isn't always welcome in the art, but the reality is that everything you do is a pitch of some sort.
Yeah.
Like everything. Like it's. And the other thing too is that words are really, really powerful. And I think if we really start understanding that every interaction that we have with someone is an opportunity to change, and however grand or small a way, the way that the other person lives their life.
That's deep.
Every interaction. If you want it to be. Well, it's not even if you want it to be. It does. Now, are we always taking advantage of that situation? Probably not, But I think even taking the moment just to kind of think about, okay, the very next person I meet, what's the first thing I'm going to tell them about myself? And for a lot of people, that conversation is your job, right? It's like, oh, I'm Jeff and I'm a teacher. Or I'm this, and I do, and is that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but is that again, like we're doing that because we view it as like an important thing, an important identifier for ourselves.
Right.
So is your job the most important way that you identify yourself as, you know?
Yeah, and so I like that because I also think about, again, it makes you really have to think of, again, let's say like 2 months ago, if you're like, if you were asking me all this, I think my job would be very far down the pathway, like, to be able to understand me. But it's also like, the things that I really love to do, or the things that I can really monetize to, like, as an impression, aren't even things I necessarily would think of to describe myself.
And I think that that is also something that gets at an issue for a lot of poets as well, because they would look at, I could see an attack coming where they'd be like, we've been trained to associate our job with that first identifier because of kind of like the capitalist system we're in, because we've been taught that what brings in the income for us is the most important thing for us, right?
Right.
So that's why when I introduce myself, I don't tell you, oh, well, I spent, an hour a day writing a poem. Oh, I tell you that. No, I tell you what I do for my 9 to 5. That's why I tell you. I don't tell you that I spent all day.
There's also a lot of, like, I think a lot of times, like, embedded class signaling and stuff like that,
for sure.
like
100%.
like that people get with their jobs and stuff like that. Which is, I mean, I'm not trying to call down on, like, whatever somebody's handshake is, right? But it's just to say, like, I think, like, there's definitely some reasons why somebody might. And it also kind of depends on the setting, right? So if, like, I'm at some kind of seminar or something like that, and there's, a whole bunch of professionals around, or a whole bunch of doctors around, like, maybe my handshake is whatever I have my doctor. It's like who the heck knows? But I do think that having those things more developed, or having not only those things more developed, those, like, the things that we are working on, or I think, like, who we are as, like in our craft, or whatever the case may be, having those more clearly developed front of mind is something that I even try to work on. I'm even trying to work on in a lot of respects. I'm trying to be like, well, I'm not a man. I'm just trying to do this. I'm trying to, like, I'm a filmmaker, right? And so, like, and I think in a lot of spaces, like, you can kind of feel hesitant. You can kind of feel like, man, I don't really want to put this out there, put that out there. But, it's not it's worth thinking about it. It's worth really considering, like, how you can kind of language that in your life.
A lot of it has to do with just kind of mindset shifting, like taking
or like, this, which is, that's like the brain of your chest.
Wow.
Your heart.
Because I think mindset changes everything. Like if you change what you're looking for, you change you literally change what you see. Like it's funny. So again, today we had the first meeting for the Poet Business Institute, and one of the things is we went around kind of just talking about our goals, because I want to make sure that moving forward we're helping everyone move towards their specific goals. And for so many, for being with a lot of creative people, there's a real lack of vision going on.
Somebody that was in that class is watching this.
No, I told them, I literally told them this. Like, it's so, like, for instance, I literally ask you the question, if you're watching this, what's the goal for your work?
What was the most common goal that you heard today?
So I'll pose this, and then I'll talk about what they would describe. So, like, my question for you right now is, what is your goal, like, 1 year from now, with your work, and what's your 3-year goal from now? What's the 1 year plan? What's the 3 year? What are we moving towards? And maybe your answer is going to sound like something kind of like what our group was. Like, for our group, one person mentioned that they wanted to help people navigate their emotions. Okay. So that's your 3-year goal, is to help people navigate their emotions through poetry. So, my thing is, if you close your eyes, what does that look like? What do you see? Versus this. So we talked through it.
Yeah.
And we ended with that same person. We ended with our 3-year goal is to create a program, not just a program, to create a 6-week program that's run several times a year that meets weekly during that 6-week period, for 1 to 2 hours in a small group setting to use poetry as a means to explore grief. Which one do you see? Which one do you see? Do you see the first one or do you see the second one? You know what I mean? Like,
and that's really good because I think that one of the things that we do a lot, and I do this with myself as well, is I set very ambiguous goals because that way I can't fail. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like nobody that sets the goal of, I want to help people explore their emotions. There's no barometer for success or failure, right? Because it's like if somebody walked away and says, "Man, I thought about emotions today." It's like, yeah, 3 years success. So it's like, and the thing is, it's like most of these people have a clear vision, but they just don't have a high resolution. Like they're not they don't have access to the highest resolution of that vision. And I'm like, I think it's good to really sit in that thought, sit in that goal until you can clearly draw out like the scenario where you won, where you were successful. And I think that, again, having a goal like that where you're like, man, my goal is this super ambiguous thing, is like, because the thing is, you're gonna miss the mark of the thing that you were thinking of regardless, right? So like you're gonna miss that mark. But now you can't, it's like you're tricking your brain. You're trying to trick your brain into be like, well, my goal was never I wanted to have 20,000 people at this seminar. My goal was never to write this many books. My goal, it was just to help people or whatever. So because because I don't have this thing set in stone that I'm missing, I can't miss.
Yeah. It's just interesting how you bring up failure. One of the things, talking about my teaching pronunciation business, that's something I've been harping on with my students today and yesterday, was I told them basically the reason that they haven't reached their pronunciation goals yet is because they haven't made enough mistakes yet. I was like, you literally... How would that change if you're like, to reach your goal, whatever your goal is, you need to make 100,000 mistakes. You know what I mean? In some ways, I find that very liberating, actually. Because suddenly it becomes very finite. It's like, there's an end goal. I can do that. Yeah. I can work towards that. I can move. It gives me something. And I like that. Also, I think, going back to what you mentioned about failure, is it changes failure from something to avoid to something to attain.
And I like that. I like to think about failure as less as something to attain, as something that is inevitable if I'm going to be what I want to be at this stage. And I think about like, you know what? I think about, I don't know if you guys are basketball heads out there. But Anthony Edwards, I think it was like last season when they, I think it was like getting kind of close to the end of the season and they had just lost this game. It's like during like the interview, he felt it, you know what I mean? And he's one of those players that, losing isn't this, I guess. Yeah, I guess he's really feeling it. But it's like, to be clear, it's like you should probably feel that you lost, right? Like you should probably feel, and so I don't think anybody's trying to say like, oh, like yes, I took it. No, but I think it's like it's more of a, you have to be able to have a barometer for failure, B, know that you failed. It should feel like you failed, but that way that there's something to work on and there's some things to do. And I think a lot of times like people can't. like I joke around. She's probably asleep right now. So my wife, it's so funny because we play 2K, right? 2K is like a basketball game, and like it's hilarious because I've been playing 2K my entire life, right? Like pretty much since I was a kid. I've always had, like, whenever I had a game system, I would be playing 2K all of my life. When you're a kid playing 2K, you go through all the stages of grief of losing, right? So like you're losing, the game is cheating. You see that he can never do that in the game. You're frustrated and stuff like that over all that, and I think that's like it's so funny because like I'm watching her because she didn't really play video games growing up, so like I'm watching her go through those stages as an adult, and it's like you should be able to feel the loss. Like now what you don't want to do is you don't want to overreact to loss. You don't want to treat a loss as if it's the end or like that it's a mark of your inaccessibility to your goal. You should look at it like it's inevitable. You're gonna lose. And the great thing about knowing that it's inevitable is that if you know that it's inevitable, then you know that like whatever lessons I got from this, then like great. Like I can still extrapolate something from an inevitability. If I know tomorrow the sun is gonna go down at 8:45, then like maybe I do a photo shoot at sunset because like I know it's like it's an inevitable thing that's supposed to happen.
I get that. I still like viewing it as something to attain because what I see is that I'll relate it back to language learning a moment.
Yeah.
The changes that students are making are often this big in class. Even though I'm literally telling them in class that the change that they need to make is like this big. But we just have a tendency to stay too safe. We at some point,
I see how you mean.
We have to, and I understand that people can interpret it how you are too. But I think at the same, we have to take way more risks.
Yeah, and
we play things way too safe. When I say that, we have to, like we have to make. You're not making enough mistakes. I should probably even rephrase it. You're not making enough new mistakes.
Yeah. I think and maybe I think the direction I was taking was more of like maybe the attitude towards losing and I think that what you're saying is like the attitude towards risk should not be I'm so afraid to lose that risk is I'm mitigating the risk involved because like a lot of times because you're mitigating the risk you're not losing hard enough right so like you might be in a situation where it's like man actually permission to use a sports analogy
granted.
yes okay so years ago I can't remember the point guard's name but Devin George maybe it was Devin George so Devin George had a game really bad game he went 1 for 9 shooting he went 0 for 9 shooting right and he went 0 for 9 shooting throughout the course of the first half and so for the rest of the game he just didn't shoot anymore and Kobe like they asked Kobe because Kobe had a game in the same night and they're like what do you think about Devin George's 0 for 9 or whatever like he was like I would have went 0 for 30 you know what I mean like 0 for 9 means that at some point you stopped you just decided it's not my night I'm just gonna stop doing that and I'm like and they lost the game by a really large margin and he was like you could have lost the game by a really large margin going 0 for 9 or maybe you start making some shots at some point but maybe in the worst case scenario it's like you didn't stop trying worst case scenario you were like I'm a shooter and your coach knows you're a shooter your teammates know you're a shooter. Now, granted, Kobe was a shooter, right? So Kobe's like, I'm gonna miss all of these before I stop shooting. Right. But I'm like, even on the late, like in Kobe's case, it's like, as great of a player Kobe was, Kobe understood that like my job on this team, my primary job is to be the guy that gets buckets. You know what I mean? As much as of a team guy, I can pass. I get rebounds, I do all that other stuff, but like my job is to get buckets. And if my job is to get buckets, 0 for 9 is a bigger failure than 0 for 30. 0 for 9 means I psyched myself
Right.
out. 0 for 9 means that, man, I got scared to be who I am midway through the game, and I stopped being who I am and I turned into something else, and that
Right.
something else is a quote unquote safer, more risk averse individual. And you can't, again, like, you can't be the guy that scored 81 points if you're not willing to be the guy that goes 0 for 30. You know what I mean? You can't be the guy that got 5 rings if you're not willing to be the guy that gets 0. Like it's a really weird system,
Yeah.
and a lot of people, it's really hard for people to grasp, because like people, you want to be safe, you want to,
Yeah.
and you want to increase at a safe that's like at places like safe for you, and you want to invest your $5 in the stock market and get 20, and then safely divest from the stock. You want that, but I'm like, that's not how the game is played.
I think you see that, for instance, with events. Like you want to have the event that's sold out. All right. Well, how many events are you willing to do where it's 2 people showing up? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
How often are you willing to get out there and like push yourself, and then be sitting there, a couple people trickle in, and what do you do when that happens, right? So like a couple people trickle in, do you give them the best time of their life for that show, or are you upset and you kind of waste that opportunity? So.
yeah. You know. As we approach the end, I think one other thing I want to consider. So again, the title of this episode is how to repair relationships with business. I think one of the last things I would posit would be that the end goal. So when we're thinking about how to repair post relationship with business, I think the last thing I would say is that we need to change the end goal, because the end goal, in my opinion, isn't money. And I think people would be like, but Jeff, this is business, and business is about profit and survival. But I would say that money is the byproduct. The thing we are really going after that is more valuable is impact. Because the things that generate the largest impact are also the things that generate wealth. And not wealth just purely from a financial standpoint. Like all kinds of, it's going to make you feel, if you're impacting people's lives in a way that's meaningful to yourself and to them, that just, it doesn't have that icky feeling of the pushy salesman. You're like, I help make someone's life better.
Well, I think that exchange feels really even and really meaningful for both parties, right? So it's like, if I'm a basketball, well, I keep using basketball as an analogy. If I am a rugby player, no, but okay, here's a good example. Let's say I go to my favorite, boba tea spot. Like, there's a boba tea spot on High Street. I go there, and if somebody just said it cost, if somebody, like, you don't have any point of reference, somebody says it costs $8. The next question I'm going to ask is like, what costs $8, right? And so I'm like, if the boba, like, I really love that stuff, and it's like, I really like it, and I'm like, if somebody handed me a bottle of water in the middle of High Street where it's like, I can get water anywhere else, and they would say it's $8, probably wouldn't do it. But if somebody's like, this is your favorite boba spot, this is your favorite boba drink or whatever, I would get it, right? I've gotten it plenty of times before.
I think people, in the arts, are just really, the mindset is so based around poverty and hoarding, and money is a resource that I get it and I have to protect it and I can't spend it. When in reality there's probably something you like buying. There's probably something that you're happy to buy. Book comes out, your friend has a new book coming out. you probably are okay with handing them the money. You know what I mean? So, and it works the other way too. There are people out there that you have something for that they would like to get from you if you would offer it.
Yeah.
You know? Like it's, and I think some of this is also, I was listening to Myron Golden. Have you listened to Myron Golden?
I'm not.
He's business minded, but it's like high level stuff. And you actually might like him because he does a lot of analogies with faith in the Bible. Like he's built his whole approach to handling business using the Bible, purely as the Bible. He's like, the Bible is a business textbook.
Sounds interesting.
It's a super interesting approach. I don't agree with everything he says, but I like a lot of what he says. And I'm not, like, I believe in God, but I'm not like I wouldn't describe myself as like a super religious person.
He's not in the business of the Bible.
You know, but like, where was I going with this?
Myron Golden, business of the Bible.
What was I saying right before that? It's hard sometimes. It's hard sometimes, right? We'll check out Myron Golden. It was a good business. It was. I mean, we were talking about value. We were talking about
how somebody might enjoy giving. You might, if your friend had a book, you would enjoy paying them the money.
Yeah, it's clearly gone. It's gonna come back to me in like 5 minutes. But I think that we're talking about poverty mindset and abundance mindset. Okay. Again, we've mentioned previously that we can always create more, like wealth. You can't create more time. Man, I'm still floundering. What is the thing? It was super. I liked it. I thought it would be really impactful. All right. It's completely gone.
Sorry, guys.
I tried fishing around for it. Didn't come up. But I think the thing that like a lot of poets are afraid to spend money on stuff. And this is what it was. Okay. So part of the issue, according to Myron, is that the part of the reason why people are so afraid to part with money, and especially people in like creative fields don't like parting with their money, is because they don't view it as money. They view it as, for instance, a month of their life or a year of their life. Like, I can't buy this car because this new car costs $10,000 only. I don't view it as $10,000. I was like, oh my gosh, that's half a year's paycheck. You know what I mean?
Remember that movie, Justin Timberlake movie? Is it Time? Is that what it's called? Where like they had it's a really good analogy for that.
I think I know. I didn't see the movie, but I have the idea. But
time was current. Time was currency in that point, and it was like once you turn 25, you get this like clock on your arm, and like you can transfer money by shaking somebody's hands and like getting money or getting time from them.
That's interesting.
Really interesting concept. Bad movie, but I love the concept though.
But so this is the problem. So people in
sorry, Justin Timberlake, if you're watching this, I know you are.
People in lower level fields in general, where the amount of income you make is based entirely on the amount of hours you work. You're constantly stuck in these measurements. You're being like, oh my gosh, I can't. This car is literally half a year of my life, or a year of my life, or 2 years of my life. Like that's literally how you're measuring it, Whereas when you see people who are wealthier, it becomes more things are an offer away. Like, oh, like that new car, I just got to make, what's something I can offer to people, and that if enough people get it at once, I get the car. Or I get the thing. What's something I can create of enough value to enough people that, you know, I'm able to get what I want, in the
I
full
also
world.
think, I also think about like, what happens after you receive the like maybe you're thinking about what the asset means or using it as an asset as opposed to just a possession, right? So like getting a car, like maybe getting a, like, let's say there's a, maybe you have, kind of like an older vehicle or whatever like that, and you're like, man, this car costs $15,000. Actually, when we were in I think I think we're in Chicago at this time. I can't remember. Like, we're in Chicago with for, actually no, yeah, we're there for like a friend's wedding, I think, or like that. But we were in Chicago and we were taking an Uber, and while we're taking the Uber, the person that was driving the Uber, like it was like one of like the upper tier Ubers. What are they?
Oh, I know
Uber
what you're talking
X.
about. Yeah.
And he was just saying that like he used to have a different car. He got this car so that he could do Uber X because you get paid more, and he just realized that, I want to get paid more, and if I get paid more, I'll be able to pay off this vehicle, but then also I'll be able to do other things, and I'll be able to keep, like, he essentially, it's really equivalent to, a limo service, right? So
Right.
like if you have a limo, I mean, it's not maybe the exact same pricing, but it's like for him and for his services and what he needed, it's like, I don't know how well that business plan is going, to be clear, but it's just to say that it's like somebody like him, he was like, he saw the value in having this as an asset as opposed to what he currently had, and he saw the way to make it profitable for him.
So it's interesting using Uber too, because he's still in a difficult position because he's still trading his time for income, right? His asset is his car, but his car can't work for him. He still physically has to drive his car, right?
Well, yeah, but it's also, I think there's like kind of like and we had a kind of a lengthy conversation. It was like a 17-minute car ride, right?
5 stars.
Great conversation. It was interesting. Like, Ajane has this really cute skill of like being able to, like, everybody that talks to Ajane for some reason wants to give them like their entire life story. It's so weird. But essentially, like, we're talking to him and he's just like he does have a plan. Like, he has like I'm using this vehicle right now for this window of time. I don't think he's necessarily like I'm paying off the entire car during this window of time, but he's like, I'm going to make more than I'm going to end up paying directly for this vehicle, because like he's gonna like sell the vehicle. Something like this, like some system that he has, and he's done it. He's done it before, right? So like this is the second iteration of what this process looks like for him. Because I think initially he didn't have a vehicle and he didn't really have any kind of use for a vehicle, but he was just like, Uber is a thing. Uber and Lyft is a thing, and he wanted to be able to use it in order. And again, this is also a good example of like, he's still working kind of the, I don't know what exactly his schedule. So you're right. He's kind of like interchanging the time in that regard. But I think it's for him. He was like, once the vehicle's value went down to a certain price, like that's when he knew the cutoff was, and that's when he was going to sell it, because he was like, I'm going to sell it before it can go any lower than that, but I'm going to make a lot more from the vehicle than
Right.
like it's worth. So like maybe I pay $10,000 for it, and maybe I sell it. Or, I mean, this is just an example because I don't know how much you paid for the vehicle. It's more than $10,000. It's a really nice car. But it was like, maybe let's say if he bought it for $10,000, he sells it for $7,500, but he made $12,000 in that window of time. You know.
So I think I like what you're saying about assets and things, and this is why things like having books are really helpful, because you have a book, the book never goes away. You can build on it. It might lead to different opportunities and things like that. And 10 years from now, people could still find that book and want it and learn from it, and benefit from it. I think, and this will probably be the last point, I think if you're really considering writing as something that you want to sustain you, I think finding ways to create your specific platform is really helpful because it doesn't go away. It can branch off into different things. It can include things like books, it include things like workshops. It can include, for instance, if you have a channel like video content that people can come back to and get your thoughts on. It can give you opportunities to develop your own kind of unique take or perspective on a branch of the field. I think these are ways that you can really start separating yourself, because that's the last thing, is that I think a lot of poets aren't necessarily finding ways to differentiate themselves from other poets. And so that's, at some point, we need to be thinking about what's your unique approach that people can find you on, and turn to you for.
100%.
Anyways, there's obviously much more we could talk about business-wise, but if you guys have questions or topics related to business that you would like to see, be sure to let us know. To find out more information about Poet Business Institute, you can also reach out to us at diversipoetry.com. Yeah, thanks for watching. Once more, my name is Jeff.
Matthias.
We'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. Take care, guys. Bye.